This special called session of the Board of Trustees for the Spring Independent School District is officially called to order on Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. The time is now 7:02 p.m. Board of Trustee members that are present is Trustee Adams, Trustee Correa, Trustee Hodges, Trustee Durant, Trustee Jensen, Trustee Newhouse, and Trustee McDaniel. I would like to ask everyone to please turn off or silence their cell phones or any electronic devices. All right, our first agenda item tonight is agenda participation. This item allows members of the public an opportunity to speak on agenda topics before those items are considered by the board. Mr. Binkley, do we have anyone signed up to speak tonight on agenda participation?
Yes, Madam President, we have 3 speakers tonight. Before I invite our first speaker to the podium, I do have a short statement I need to read. The board invites interested citizens to address the board regarding any item on tonight's agenda that they desire, other than allegations concerning the character or capability of any board member, staff member, citizen, or student of the district. The board will listen and will not interrupt unless the person addressing the board infringes on the guidelines as stated previously or exceeds the time limit authorized for the presentation. In this case, each of you will have 3 minutes to present. Mr. Sheffer will keep time, which will be displayed on the monitors. The board will not debate nor respond to any question during agenda participation. The board will seriously consider your input when addressing the items on tonight's agenda. Also, according to law, it is a criminal offense for a person to obstruct, prevent, interfere with, or disrupt a lawfully called meeting through physical action or verbal utterance. Citizens are requested to supplement any oral address to the board with a written summary of their presentation and any recommendations they may wish to suggest. Thank you for your concern regarding our school district, and we will hear you now. Our first speaker tonight is Kendra Nunez.
Hello. And then do I face this way or that way?
Face the trustees.
Okay. So hello. So I would like to dispute the overpayment for the Teacher Effectiveness Incentive Program. First, we were never informed of the formula the district was using to calculate the payments, nor were we told how much we would be receiving. Also, the money was received half a year ago. I received the short notice on Monday, March 20th, that they would be deducting $78.95 for the next 19 pay period starting March 24th. This feels like forced retention. I say that because now at hiring time, we're being told we can either pay per check for 19 pay periods and re-sign with the district, or if I decide to leave and find a district that does respect my efforts, they will take the full amount. Also, I was told when I called the district office that we were supposed to receive that itemized statement when we first received the money. I didn't receive that. After the fact, I received a flyer and a snippet of an Excel sheet, and receiving that after the fact does nothing for me. Also, we are being held responsible for paying back taxes that we never received. $1,400 went to the government, not me. And also, someone else is here that was not able to sign up, but he called to confirm that the money he received was correct when he received it. He also held on to the money for 3 months just to make sure. Once he spent the money, now we're being told in March we have to pay that back. That is a financial hardship for us all. And that's what I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nunez.
As Mr. Sheffer resets the timer, our next speaker is Tabitha Lett. Ms. Lett.
Hello. The year started off great with new initiatives and an incentivized staff due to the promise of spring rewards. Much of the morale that the rewards created was damaged irrevocably by the handling of it. On October 10th, many of us received less than a third of the 9,000 to 12,000 promised. As the second highest scoring school in the district, with test scores averaging 85% passing and 72% growth, we were baffled. We felt defrauded, as Spring Rewards was the reason why many of us stayed due to feelings of appreciation. So we inquired and received no response. Then several of my department received a notice of overpayment stating that amounts topping $1,000 would be garnished on 12/10 checks right before Christmas. I was one of those people. As the bonuses were not itemized, there was no way we could have known of overpayment. After several failed attempts to get in touch with someone, I was met with an extreme lack of compassion. The overpayment garnishment left me struggling to pay my mortgage, utilities, groceries, and medical care. Although this was not the first time, but the sixth, that the district's payroll had mishandled my compensation, the garnishment put a strain on my mental, physical, emotional, and financial health, as there was no way I could have known or prepared for such a hefty mistake. So you could imagine the toll it took when I received a notice that another wage garnishment will begin on March 25th due to overpayment a second time. Please understand that I did not receive any additional monies. This overpayment was overlooked from October 10th, and the notice was received on March 20th. Again, my inquiries have gone unheard. Even with the repeated mistakes, I have given my all to this district, staying late into the night, being available to students into the weekends, creating enrichment events, advocating for students and staff, you name it. All in the midst of the district's mistake, destroying my financial security repeatedly over the last 6 months. There are mistakes, and then there's gross negligence that, at the very least, shows an inconsideration towards the mental, emotional, and physical well-being of your staff, and at the most, feel like abject cruelty. But by March 20th, over half of my department have been negatively impacted by the overpayment, and all have decided not to return to Spring ISD. As a dedicated educator, I will continue to do my best to support my students, but I no longer believe that Spring ISD will do their best to support me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final speaker for tonight is Pavlo Chubinski. You'll approach the podium, please.
Does time start when I start?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Mr. Chubinski. I teach English for Dekaney High School, and I'm also the communications chair for Spring AFT. So I'll basically just be relaying some thoughts about teacher concerns that we've heard from teachers generally regarding the overpayment deductions, as well as, what I know from union members specifically. And I want to bring your attention to the word retention, because as it's been well publicized since the beginning of Spring Rewards, we know that the intent of Spring Rewards has been retention. And so as I've followed the story of how rewards have been, dispensed, it's clear that there's been a lot of back and forth, and sometimes I think a lack of communication. And so just to emphasize what you've heard from other speakers today, there has been mention of people just not receiving messages back. And we know that the board has oversight of what district employees do. And so what I think would be the best step moving forward is for the board to postpone the actions of other district employees and affecting these deductions for overpayment. As we've heard today, there's been about 3 or 4 days notice given to teachers at this district to make these overpayment deductions work. We've heard in the news that some people have been asked to repay as much as $9,000 in this very short time frame. And so for teachers and for union members, that is a strain. Because our intent is to retain teachers, and as you've heard from other teachers today, they want to continue that. That's just what I would encourage, is for the board to postpone these overpayment deductions and to come to some mutual terms with teachers about how long it might take to pay these out, how teachers are affected specifically. And I think if that's done, then a lot of these problems that we've heard about today, the short notices going back to October, this lack of communication, we want more public communication, the government tax payments, that to me is very much just to my attention. I can't imagine how hard members must feel hearing that they'll have to pay something back that was a transactional mismanagement that they did not make themselves. So teachers are already overworked, sometimes working up to 15 or 20 hours of overtime in a week. Please partner with us to make this go smoothly.
Thank you.
We have no further speakers tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Binkley. So at this time, the Board of Trustees is going to recess this open session and convene in a closed session in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.071 and 551.074. No voting will take place in this closed session, and any action that the board wishes to take, excuse me, as a result of the discussion in closed session will take place after we reconvene here again in this open session. And the time is now 7:14 p.m. We'll be back. Good evening. We will now reconvene the open special called session and continue with tonight's agenda. The time is now 8:22 p.m. And at this time, I would like to recognize our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Lupita Hinojosa.
Thank you, Ms. Durant. I am actually, myself and Ms. Westbrooks are going to come down so we can do a presentation for the rest of this discussion, the item that we have. Ms. Durant and members of the board and our senior leadership team, as well as our guests that are here tonight. What we want to do tonight is to bring an update to our board on our 2022 Teacher Effectiveness, Retention, and Recruitment Incentive. We want to provide you an update. And so just want to always anchor our work in our district priorities. Of course, this incentive program touches each and every one of our priorities in order for us to stay focused on our North Star goal. Ultimately, what we're looking to do is to ensure that we have excellent, equitable outcomes for all students, that all of our students have the opportunity to attend A and B campuses, and that we eliminate failing campuses in our district, that being our D and F campuses. And so as we begin this presentation and this update, I want to make sure and I give the board just a full, comprehensive quick walkthrough through the timeline of what has gotten us here. What we, Ms. Westbrooks and I, will then do is go deep in each one of these sections. But just to provide you an overview, that back in May of 2022, the administration, working closely with our teams, listening to our staff, we brought forth a teacher effectiveness incentive and an employee recruitment and retention incentive. And we presented it to you, the board, and it was approved in May. In September, we began to collect data as needed in order for us to begin the implementation of the teacher effectiveness incentive. In October was when we actually did the payout. October 25th, we paid out 364 employees specifically on the teacher effectiveness incentive pay. I want to remind the board that we have several other programs that are going on, such as the Spring Rewards, a lot of other projects such as the retention. So a lot of payments were done on October 25th, but specifically on the teacher effectiveness incentive, we also launched an inquiry span of time where employees, as they got their incentive, were also given a link. If they had any questions or concerns about their payment, that was open from October 25th, the day the payments came, through November 8th. In all, by November, we actually answered 17 inquiries about the teacher effectiveness incentive. We also at that time discovered and corrected some over and under payments. Fast forward to January, and I will be going very deep into what happened in October and November, but just big overview. In January, we did, in fact, by November and December, know that there were some gaps. You, the board, asked us to take a deep, in-depth review of our program, and that was done in January. We came back to the board in February and said we've discovered some gaps, and at that time we had a discussion and received approval to go back and rectify the errors, and I'll be going over that in more depth. And then in March, we not only had another audit of this project, of this program, but once again, we discovered that there were underpayments. And so on March 10th, teachers that were underpaid received the payments. And on March 10th, those people that were overpaid received a notification. And so just taking us back to what is the Teacher Effectiveness Project or program, it is focused or was focused on recruiting effective teachers, on retaining effective teachers, and rewarding effective teachers. The specific components of this program were our teachers, specifically focusing on STAR achievement and growth. And it was anchored on the teacher appraisal system, meaning the T-test summative ratings. And we also, this program was focused on the number of years of experience that a teacher had. So fast forward, those were the components, but we also had a retention component. And so at that time, we also approved that second part, that all employees that were returning would receive $2,000 retention bonus. And we agreed that the first part would be paid in August of 2022 because the teachers came back. And then the second part would be paid in January of 2023. And this component was for all employees. We actually paid out $7.8 million to our 5,200 employees. And we also, as part of the retention program, added 2 wellness days. You added 2 wellness days for all returning employees. So as we now look at the payout for the teacher effectiveness, all right? On the payout, remember I said it was based on STAR achievement or growth, the T-test summative evaluation. Teachers had to have a rating of proficient or higher, and we were looking at the number of years of experience. The payouts for this program, the teacher effectiveness, began in October, actually October 25th paycheck. We actually paid out 364 teachers. They earned and received an effectiveness incentive. And for this component, we paid out approximately little over $1.5 million. And so, as you'll recall, in December, we had some concerns that were brought to us. You asked us to go back and review. We took the month of January and did some in-depth review of the project. And so in February, when we came back to you, we presented that we, from the administration side, had some gaps. There were some lapses. First and foremost, we weren't clear in identifying or defining who was classified as a teacher. We have several employees that are in that capacity, but were not classified as teachers, so we failed to clearly define that. We also failed to include our STAR Alt teachers. As part of the accountability system, when you talk about STAR, it includes STAR, STAR Alt, and EOC. And we failed to include the STAR Alt teachers. We also failed to include the science and social studies teachers in this program. Science and social studies teachers do not have the opportunity to show growth because growth is shown from one year to the next, but they are able to show and meet achievement. And so we made the error where we did not include the science and social studies teachers. And we also failed to clearly delineate the data analysis methodology. We did not publish how this was going to be calculated. And specifically, we did not clearly define how many students a teacher had to have to qualify for the program. And so at the state level, normally it's 5 students. We didn't clearly define it. And then finally, we didn't clearly address the testing parameters. So in February, we came to you and said, after we've done our in-depth review, here are the gaps. Here are the missteps that we, the administration, had in the implementation of the teacher effectiveness program. That's me still. All right, so we proposed at that time to the board, our proposal was that science and social studies teachers that had STAR EOC results and met the achievement as well as the appraisal requirements, that they be eligible, that they should receive the teacher effectiveness incentive. We also asked the board, we proposed in February, that teachers with STAR, with EOC, and STAR Alt students should also receive the incentive pay regardless of class size. And we shared with the board that based on our in-depth review of the student achievement data, we would anticipate an additional payment of $238,500 to pay out an additional 54 teachers. We also at that time recommended that these payouts be made on March 10th, at their March 10th paycheck.
So at that February board meeting, the board approved that we move forward with those recommendations that Dr. Hinojosa just noted on the previous slide, and that the district continue to monitor and audit the Teacher Effectiveness Incentive Program. So as a result of that that action moving forward, we conducted an in-depth audit of all of the payments that were made as a part of the Teacher Effectiveness Incentive. And so what we found as a result of that was that there was a clerical sorting error that happened in the file that was used to pay the teacher effectiveness incentive. And as a result of that, there were underpayments and there were overpayments, and the number is equal. There were 110 individuals that were underpaid, and those individuals received their payment. The difference between what they were paid on October 25th versus what they should have been paid based upon the eligibility requirements of the program was paid to them on the March 10th paycheck. Also, the 110 or so individuals who were overpaid were notified on March 20th that they had been overpaid. And in the notification that was received, it expressed that they would have 19 paychecks in order to pay those amounts back. And so so there were two amounts that an employee could have been overpaid, and that was $1,500 or $3,000. Those are the only two amounts that we sent notifications out on March 20th, and that was either $1,500 or $3,000 were the amount of the overpayments. And so as part of the Texas Constitution, specifically Article 3, Section 52 and 53, the district cannot gift public funds. And as such, as stewards of taxpayer dollars, we're operating with public funds, we have to recoup any funds that were incorrectly paid to employees. And as mentioned just a moment ago, the overpayment right now, we've set up the opportunity for our employees to repay that amount over 19 paychecks. The first one was March 24th, and it will go through that last second paycheck in December of 2023. We've said to our employees publicly, we've mentioned it in our media statement, and it was said in the meeting that we had with those individuals that joined the meeting on March 21st, if there are extenuating circumstances to the effect where the 19 paychecks is too much of an amount coming out of their paycheck, to contact our payroll director, and we would extend those payments beyond December 23rd to lessen the hardship and the impact on our employees. And then lastly, we're currently continuing to analyze all of our processes to ensure that this type of error doesn't happen again in the future. So some
Ms.
solutions.
Westbrooks, how
Yes,
many
ma'am.
employees have we heard from that have requested additional time?
The last time that I reached out to our director of payroll, we had about 4 employees who had contacted her and requested to have their payments stretched beyond the December 2023 date.
And how were those employees contacted originally? Was it through email?
We sent an email to all of the employees that were overpaid. Inside of that email, there was a link that was a contact form, and it said if you wanted someone to contact you regarding this overpayment, fill out it was a Google form. And so everyone that filled out that Google form that wanted to be contacted, we invited them to a meeting on March 21st, and it was at 5:15 in the evening, and they had an opportunity to ask questions, express concerns, express their frustrations during that time. And we had, I believe, about 46 to 50 individuals that joined that call that day.
Ms. Westbrook, did you say that meeting was on March 21st?
Yes.
And they received the email on March 20th?
The email regarding the overpayments went out on March 20th. And it included the Google Doc where they could request someone to contact them.
Did we make any accommodation for people who maybe aren't so diligent checking their emails, or maybe had a scheduling conflict with when we did have the March 21st meeting?
We didn't set up an additional meeting time, no, but we did have a handful of employees who called us and said, I didn't make the meeting, what was discussed in the meeting? And we were able to share with them what was discussed in the meeting.
Has any additional meeting been set up to contact those that did not make the 5:15
Not at this
deadline
time.
to reach?
I'll interject there. There were, Dr. Hinojosa had plans to set up that second meeting, but from the request from the body, I asked that we have this meeting instead.
Okay, so looking ahead with some solutions that we have, one thing is we had a change in our leadership in human resources effective this past Friday. And anytime you have a change in leadership, it gives an opportunity to look deeply at the processes, the procedures, and work on any changes that need to be made. And so temporarily, under my leadership, in collaboration with the financial services team and with the remaining leadership within human resources, we'll work collaboratively to work on those processes and procedures that have improvement opportunities. And it has to be a collaboration because the work of human resources and the work of financial services go hand in hand. So that's an opportunity that we're taking advantage of right now. Corrective actions, just as I mentioned earlier, is just looking at all of our work streams, making sure that we're evaluating our software systems. And we're also about to post for some temporary staff in both human resources and financial services to prepare for the summer hiring season that will impact the summer payroll season, so that we can ideally avoid some of the challenges that we had with the extreme amount of hiring that happened last summer when we had about 1,100 new hires. So those would be temporary staff members that would help during those high processing periods to help bring down the errors. Continuing to monitor and audit our systems and processes, as mentioned earlier. And then another item that I want to make sure that I bring attention to, as Dr. Hinojosa walked through the timeline of the Teacher Effectiveness Incentive Program, there was a very short turnaround between receiving the test scores for the last school year, the receipt of the data that was needed in order to process this, and also meeting the payroll deadlines, because payroll processes early. We get paid on October 25th. Typically, we're not running payroll on October 24th. We're running payroll 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. It was an extremely compressed timeline to get all of this data together and reviewed. There's a reason why lots of incentive programs that you see at the state level and other areas are paid a year in arrears. And that's because it gives you time to pull the data and ensure the accuracy of the data and review the data before those payouts are made. And so in a way, that compressed timeline created some additional challenges. And so as we look forward to these programs that we're always extremely excited about offering to our employees, we also need to be very understanding and make sure that we're creating a reasonable timeline in order to do our due diligence and make sure that these payments are made in an accurate fashion.
So, Ms. Westbrook, does that mean that if going forward, we wanted to offer this sort of incentive program, we could not offer it on the timeline that we did this past year? Or have we learned enough lessons that would allow us to do it in October payout?
We would suggest that we pay those payments out a lot further out. So say, for example, we received the data, I believe in August is when the data first became available. So between August and September, and mind you, September is the heaviest busy season for getting all of those new hires processed and getting all of those folks paid on that first paycheck. So that time period is not the time period to have a very large program such as this incentive program going on at the same time with the same staff. There was no new additional staff. There was no outside help that came in. This was all with existing staff. So if we were to do this same type of program going forward, we would try to push those payments probably into January or February, so that there's enough time to, again, do the due diligence and make sure that what we're doing, what we're processing is accurate and it's timely. So I think we got very excited and a bit overzealous with our timeline, and it set us up for some challenges.
Are we required by, is there any policy or law or procedure that says that the stipend or incentive has to be included with their payroll check? It could not have been just an additional check?
It could have been.
Okay.
It could have been, but the timing would have been just as challenging. So ideally, we do want to put their incentive pays on a regular paycheck, because technically there's IRS implications if you pay outside of your regular payroll cycle. But if your question is, could we could have, yes. But if you had done it in October or even in November, we still would have been dealing with a compressed timeline.
So what should teachers do if they miss the March 21st meeting? We know we have this meeting tonight, but if they feel that they still need more time, what are the steps they need to take?
Still need more time with paying?
To repay, yes.
They can reach out to our Director of Payroll, who is Yvette Washington, and her email address is ahamm@springisd.org. And it's available on the website as well.
They can go to Let's Talk.
They can go to Let's Talk and communicate with myself and Dr. Hinojosa, and we'll make sure we get it to the payroll office as well. So the opportunity is still there. If there's additional time that's needed, we need to stretch the payment out, the opportunity is still there.
Thank you.
Also know we had a conversation around safe loans. Can we speak to that a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. The district does have a program that has been in existence for many decades, the Safe Loan Program. It is a loan, which means that it has to be repaid. But if an employee exhibits hardship with paying their obligations, their financial obligations, behind on a car payment, that sort of thing, they can apply for a safe loan and repay that safe loan over time. And that's a lump sum that would come to them, and then they would pay it back over time with 0% interest rate.
And so, Ms. Westbrook, for clarification, you said there were how many teachers that reached out and said that they needed additional time?
The last time that I checked in with our Director of Payroll, she said about 4.
4 people.
4 people had reached out and said, I need to stretch the payments a little more.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to be clear, because I'm still a little fuzzy. What is the distinction between the teacher incentive program and spring rewards? How are they different? And one of the people that did public comment mentioned a $9,000 figure. Is it possible that there's some combination of incentives that would create that kind of payout?
We do not, as I stated earlier, the overpayment notifications that went out on March 20th were either related to the teacher effectiveness incentive was either $1,500 or $3,000. But there is a considerable amount of confusion about the different incentive plans that the district has right now. One is Spring Rising. And so that payout was also done on October 25th. The other is the teacher effectiveness allotment, which is what we've been discussing here this evening. And that one was if a teacher had 50% growth or 50% meets, and I'm looking at Dr. Parasol, they qualified. The amount that they received was based on their years of experience. So it was either 2,000, 3,500, or 5,000. So first you had to meet the growth or the academic achievement. That said you qualified. The amount you received was based on your years of service. And the years of service was intentional by you, our board, because you wanted to ensure that our teachers that had more years of experience received a larger payout. So that's the teacher effectiveness, which is what we've been dealing with this presentation today. The third is the teacher incentive allotment, which is a Texas Education Agency source of incentives that has certain criteria. It's all on the district's website. That particular payout has not happened yet. We're on TEA's timeline as it relates to the teacher incentive allotment. So I believe between Spring Rising, the teacher effective incentive, and the teacher incentive allotment, which is TEA's, there's a great deal of confusion. The highest amount you could receive with the teacher effectiveness was $5,000. The highest amount with the teacher incentive allotment is the highest amount with the teacher incentive allotment is 32,000.
We have a teacher.
Okay, it's $32,000, but that's the teacher incentive allotment that is administered through TEA and is paid with the state's funds, not with Spring ISD funds. So that's separate and apart, has not been paid out. We're under TEA's timeline for that one.
Spring Rising is not the same as spring rewards?
So the Spring Rising and Spring Rewards.
Spring Rewards is the title of everything.
Spring Rewards is the umbrella.
Okay.
Spring Rising teacher effectiveness and teacher incentive allotment are under that umbrella.
Okay.
And the highest amount on Spring Rising that an employee could receive? $12,500.
And all that's separate from the retention that went to all employees, the
Yes.
$2,000. Okay.
Yes.
So I guess to answer my colleague's question, there is a possibility that someone could have to pay back 9,000?
We have not sent out an overpayment letter to anyone that
Okay.
said that they owed $9,000.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
So I just know, we are, as a body, elected officials and have an obligation to the community who elected us to make sure that we're good stewards of their money, and that we are being fiducially responsible with that, which is why we wanted an opportunity to have this dialogue, have a thorough understanding end to end what occurred and what our alternatives are. And then we want to work very collaboratively with the administration to make sure that we've got good processes and systems in place so it doesn't happen moving forward. Make sure that just like we're all human and people make mistakes, we want to make sure we're extending grace to our teachers in that effort as they continue to reimburse that money, to make sure that we are extending grace, to make sure that we lessen any hardship that they may have, And I really want to thank you guys for making that offer and opportunity, and we want to ask that we do continue to do that moving forward.
I just wanted to add that there is nobody in this room that I know of who is overprivileged in their background and doesn't appreciate how really devastating a reduction of $150 out of your paycheck could be. Many times in my life, I couldn't have faced a $30 reduction in pay. We realized that it was our systems and our error. And I'm so glad that you have the Safe Loan, interest-free, that if someone is in dire need, that they can get help. Thank you.
So, Mr. Durant and members of the board and SLT and our teachers that are still here, want to, just once again reiterate, as you've seen in the presentation, we've identified gaps. There were failures on our part from the administration side, failures that we did not catch in time, and also, most importantly, some poor planning and poor implementation. And I have to say, it was all in good intentions, with good intentions, to try to get money to our teachers as quickly as possible. That was everyone's, top of mind. We wanted to reward our teachers for the work that they're doing every single day. And, today I've had several meetings where I've shared with employees. There's 5,200 employees here in Spring ISD. And I can assure you that every single employee is committed and dedicated to the 34,200 students that we serve. No one from central office, from operations or the school side gets up every morning to say, I'm going to do a bad job. Everyone comes to do the very best. And these dedicated employees that are serving our children, we're all human. And as humans, we make mistakes. And when we make a mistake, we immediately, I know myself, I immediately turn to someone, like, I messed up. We acknowledge it. And then we immediately go into what went wrong, how can we fix it? So we immediately go into acknowledging it and trying to rectify it. And then finally we say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we made a mistake. I'm sorry to our teachers that we made a mistake. As humans, as employees, whether we're in central office or out in the schools, we are doing our very best to ensure that every teacher that deserves their incentive is getting it. Nothing was done intentionally. And so we are sorry. I am sorry, because I understand that there is a lot of hardship out there because of a mistake that we made. And just want to re-emphasize that we have to recover the money, but it can be done in a way that doesn't create more of a burden that you're already carrying. And so the initial recommendation from the administration was go through the end of the calendar year. But we also said, if you have extenuating circumstances, let us know. Because at the end of the day, we all exist for one reason and one reason only, to be here to support our students. And so we want to ensure every single employee knows that we are dedicated to making sure that we rectify all errors. And we will continue to work diligently, both in the HR department, in the payroll department, and district-wide, to get it right, so that we can continue to recognize our employees because they're doing the very best. So once again, we're all heartbroken. I'm heartbroken that Spring ISD was on the news with inaccurate information. It was inaccurate. But at the end of the day, we own it, I own it, and I will work tirelessly to correct that. And most importantly, to support all employees, because all employees are dedicated employees to Spring ISD. So I apologize to the board for you having to go through this. I apologize to our teachers for them having to go through it. And I apologize to our central office staff that have worked diligently and are going through a very difficult time. I promise to do better to ensure that we get it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. I'd like to maybe touch on a couple of things. I know you accepted the resignation of our Chief in Human Resources, and Friday was the last day. Where are we with the posting? What are your intentions to make sure we get someone in there that can work in partnership and collaboration with our CFO to make sure that our systems and our processes are tightened up?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. Our Chief of Human Resources has resigned. Her last day was Friday. We are in day 3. Ms. Westbrooks has agreed to support the HR department because both are in the business side. HR and finance work closely together. We actually worked on revising the job description so that it is very clear on the expectations that we have of our future Chief of Human Resources. That position was posted today. We are specifically looking for someone that not only has experience in education, but also experience in the personnel side of the world. And in Spring ISD, we've had people that have had great school experience, but no experience in HR. Or we've had people here that have had experience in HR, but didn't understand the school system. So we've posted the position. We will do a national search where we can post in their professional journals to where we can attract an individual that knows education and knows personnel. The team we will assemble and go through the process of, what are the skills that we're looking for and what are the qualities, because those are two different things. So we'll go through an intense search and bring back to the board a recommendation for a future chief of HR.
And then the other question I had, I know Ms. Westbrooks indicated during certain times of the year, we will be bringing in temporary employees to help with the workload. But from a staffing perspective, can we take a look at, or do you feel that that department is staffed appropriately? Or are there changes or additional staff that's needed?
And so it'll take a little time to really get an understanding of what exactly we're looking at. Prior to the summer of 2022, I would have said that we were adequately staffed. However, if this is our new norm, if our new normal is that we're hiring 1,000 employees in the summer, the staff that we have in human resources and financial services will not do. We will have to have more staff that is in those two departments, because a normal summer was around 350 to 400 new hires. So as you can see, that's almost 3 times or more, in some cases 3 times how many new hires we typically would have processed in the summer. So hopefully 2022 was an anomaly. We're staffing up with temporary employees this year to give them an opportunity to train them up before we get into that heavy hiring season and the heavy processing season. But if we see a summer 2023 like we saw in 2022, and that's an indication that it's a new normal, then Dr. Hinojosa and I would be recommending to the board that we permanently staff those 2 departments with more employees so that we can be adequately staffed to process those new hires.
Thank you. I just want to ask my colleagues, are there any additional questions, concerns, or comments you guys would like to make?
One more question. What is the deadline to contact payroll to make payment arrangements, to extend the payment arrangements past December?
We have not given a deadline. If employees reach out to us, we're going to work with them. We told employees with the March 24th, we actually had a couple where we refunded the March 24th payment that gave them the opportunity to get, their financial affairs in order to be prepared for those repayments to come out. So there's no deadline. Now, the only thing is, like I mentioned earlier, we do process payroll ahead of schedule. So it depends on when you contact us as to when it can take place, but we will work with you.
So with that being said, that may be something that needs to be communicated, because I do recall receiving some feedback from someone in the community that mentioned they knew this a few weeks ago. Why didn't they tell us? But in actuality, that's not the case. So because of the way that payroll is done. So I think we definitely need to probably look at setting a deadline and communicating that deadline to prevent any more upsets. And because I would hate for someone to call on Monday thinking that it's something that can be turned around by Friday if payroll's already been processed. It's not fair to you, to your team either, Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to address any items that was discussed during closed session. Anyone have any motions regarding anything discussed during closed session? We're gonna go back in closed session to do the other thing. Okay. All right. Well, not hearing any at this time, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam President, I move that we adjourn tonight's board meeting, special call session.
Second.
It's been moved by trustee Hodges and seconded by trustee McDaniels to adjourn tonight's special call session. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. That motion carries unanimously. The meeting adjourns tonight at 9:04 p.m.